as our team is still quite a new unit, I should probably say a couple of words about it. It was established following last March's Council conclusions, which tasked Federica Mogherini to counter the ongoing Russian disinformation campaign. And for this, we have three different objectives how to reach this. The first of them should be better positive communicating in the Eastern Partnership countries, which are targeted very heavily by the pro-Kremlin disinformation campaign. So the thinking behind this is that if we manage to explain what the EU is about, the local audiences could stop believing the disinformation like EU will turn you all into gays and pedophiles and EU builds concentration camps and stuff like that. The second objective should be supporting the independent media, and I think the reasoning behind this is very clear, to push the objective and balanced and trustworthy information. But the reason why I was invited here was our third objective, which is countering disinformation campaign. And when we started, we saw that the expert work is practically already done, thanks to the think tanks and thanks to many experts like Edward Lucas or Peter Pomerantsev. The problem is that this knowledge about what the Russian disinformation campaign is, what it achieves, through which means it works, this knowledge is not very general. It's not still not in the general audience. So we are trying to identify the disinformation campaign, to raise awareness about it, ideally to forecast it one day. And for this we have these two weekly products, the Disinformation Review, Disinformation Digest. You can see them on our Twitter account, EU versus Disinfo, which, their main reason is to raise the awareness about this disinformation campaign.
We're at the Press Club in Brussels here for a conference on Russian hybrid war and European policy. I have with me here now Yuri Fedorov, who is an expert on Russian strategic policy and the author of a newly launched book, Hybrid Warfare, Belarus. Yuri, welcome to Brussels. Can you tell us something about your book?
Thank you, first of all. Well, this book is product of my analysis, which has been done for 2 years. Since Russian so-called hybrid aggression against Ukraine started. Well, and it's a kind of a case study. It's not so focused on concepts and conceptualizations, yet it's focused on the practical step-by-step analysis of Russia's activities in Ukraine. I'll try to find out what were the driving forces, the drivers of Russia's policy towards Ukraine, and find out that there are different levels of driving forces, starting from conceptual perceptions typical of Russian elites and public mind, perceptions of Ukraine and role of Russia in the post-Soviet space and in so-called the Russian world. Well, strategic level. And I centered on the idea which was called in Russia as Project Novorossiya, New Russia, if to translate it into English directly, which presumed that eastern southern provinces of Ukraine should be separated from the Ukrainian state and transformed in Novorossiya, which could be a belt of regions stretching from Kharkov region in northern eastern part of Ukraine, then to Black Sea shore, Crimea, and ending in Odessa region in southwestern part of the country. If had this project been implemented, then key Ukrainian industrial centers would fall under Russian domination, including a couple of key military industrial enterprises which are of critical importance for Russia, strategic communications, strategic seaports in the Black Sea, and so on. And what is also important, especially if to look at the situation from the European point of view, then Russian troops could appear at the borders of Moldova, and most probably Moldova would fall under Russia, and then a new area of direct contacts between NATO's forces in Romania and Russian forces, which possibly could appear in the area, might emerge. So should this project be implemented, then a new area of confrontation, military confrontation between Russia and NATO, in addition to the southern Baltic region, will appear.
In your personal opinion, what's all this leading to? What is hybrid warfare about? What's the aim? Is it economic destabilizing of Europe? Is it political destabilization? Or is this actually a precursor to open warfare?
Well, in my understanding, the hybrid war strategy and tactics could be seen in step-by-step approach. Well, I think that the first period or the first stage of the hybrid war or hybrid warfare could be political and economic destabilization of the neighboring or the victim country or the victim region, as Europe is not a country, it's a region. It may be resulted from appearance of pro-Russian groups and organizations, groups of saboteurs, and those organizations could be used as a nucleus of strong public disobedience and public disorders, as it happened in Donbass in 2014. It may include also economic destabilization by using gas supplies or oil supplies, energy supplies. It could be also political destabilization by using so-called Putin's friends in Europe. Unfortunately, there are some groups and persons of this sort in the EU countries, both of far left and far right parts of political spectrum. And nobody can exclude that this non-military period or non-military stages of the hybrid war could be supplemented by open warfare, well, in different forms, of course, in form of sending some paramilitary forces into neighboring or victim countries, or using regular forces and so on. It's only the generals to decide.
It was said during the course of this afternoon's conference that an aggressor will always attack their opponent's weaknesses. What do you personally think is the European Union's greatest weakness, its greatest vulnerability?
Well, it's very difficult to say what is the greatest difficulty of the European Union. Well, I think that the EU is challenging now by a necessity of changing to some extent some basic attitudes of its policy, moving a little bit away from bureaucratization, because in the eyes of many Europeans, Brussels and the EU bureaucracy is something supranational, and imposing its own, sometimes not very wise rules, and so on. That is, in my view, one of the basic difficulties which is challenging the EU now, this over or super bureaucratization, Brussels bureaucracy should be more flexible and looking, and I would say more responsible to the rank and file people of the European countries, because there is a view of the European bureaucracy in the eyes of many so-called normal or rank and file people in Europe, that European bureaucracy is not responsible to the people, that nobody can control this bureaucracy. I think it's one of the weak points which is used by Moscow propaganda rather actively. For instance, they tries to use the results of the Brexit referendum in the UK as an example of illogical and ineffective EU as an idea and as an institution. They use these Brexit results as an example of some fundamental defects of the Union itself, not as something which can be seen through different lenses, and they interpret the results as a kind of something which can be eliminated only by destroying the Union as itself. They prefer to deal with individual European countries, not as a Union as such.
I'm speaking to Mikhailo Samus, Deputy Director for International Affairs at the Center of Army Conversion and Disarmament Studies in Kiev. Mikhailos, I'd like to ask you a question about the announcement of the deployment of 4 NATO battalions to the Baltic states. That was announced during the Warsaw Summit. Is this a purely symbolic deployment, or does it actually amount to anything in your opinion?
I think, sure, this deployment is mostly the sign that NATO started to understand the situation, understand the threat by Russia, and trying to make quick solutions, quick steps to be sure that Russia won't make some unpredictable steps, unpredictable attacks on Baltic states. But I think the main goal of this and main intentions of these steps, it's internal consolidation of NATO as a union of countries which is agree to protect each other. Because if a couple of years ago war against Ukraine started, Poland and Baltic states told that they don't have any assurance from NATO because they didn't have any units, any troops by NATO and any operational plans to protect these countries. Now we have concrete solutions, concrete decisions how to protect these countries. Of course, compare the forces, compare force ratio between Russia and NATO in this direction. We could say that it's not enough, but these task forces, which will be there in rotation, mostly will show Russia that if Russia will try to attack these countries, it will touch all of NATO, all of NATO members, and it means that NATO should react on it, and NATO will understand it as an attack on organization. Talking about consolidation inside of NATO, I would say that this is a problem for now because Russia makes a lot of activities to divide Europe and United States, to divide different countries inside of Europe, trying to build separate, let's say, lines of cooperation, lines of communication between Russia and, for example, Germany, Russia, France, trying to prepare situation when in some critical conditions NATO won't react properly. Like, can you imagine that Russia trying to attack Estonia, and even with 4 task forces there, could we say that Germany will be ready to fight and will be ready to actually make a political decision to participate in this military operation to protect Estonia? I am not sure. And these words by French president that during the summit that NATO, that Russia is not a threat, it's a partner, and NATO shouldn't, let's say, manage the relationship between Russia and Europe. It's not very nice sign for Euro-Atlantic consolidation and integration.
In the context of preparations to hybrid war against Ukraine, Russia realized very systematic, very seriously mechanism of economy and financial depletion of Ukraine. And it was serious ground to start hybrid war in 2014.